Eckis marketing was really shaky. And so there were a lot of elements in my life where I was like, this has to be strong right now. I can't deal with it not being strong.
Yeah.
And my relationship was one of them. And so I think when I took a step back and all the noise cleared and I looked at where I was living and I looked at who I was living with and I was looking at my life, I was like, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just really not happy.
Yeah.
You're allowed to change your life. And I don't think a lot of people give themselves that freedom. And I don't think I was giving myself that freedom either until everything was kind of like scorched earth. And I was like, well, shit, if we're doing this, why am I living in the subpar when I just kind of blew up this whole portion of my life?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, it's wild how, like, when you finally get clarity on one thing and you, like, pull the trigger, or, like, we're going to release this, suddenly you look at everything else and it's, like, easier to see.
Yeah, it's like you're just taking off your visor.
Whitney Eckis. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Oh my God, I know.
It feels like a long time coming.
I can't remember who recorded last, if it was you on my show or me on your show, but it's been a year or so, maybe longer.
I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a new era for me. I feel like I'm bringing a lot of people back on because I just feel like starting fresh.
I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So in a fresh energy, which you are as well.
Oh my God. Yeah, I am a new human.
I purposely have not asked you as much as I want to ask you, personally, because I was like, I need to save it for the show. Like, so sorry, sorry, not sorry. And I feel like, for me, I got to see part of this journey you've been on in the last few years, I think from maybe a different angle than other people. And then how things kind of unfolded at the end, I'm like, question mark. I need to know the tea.
Yeah.
But you have gone through such an incredible transformational journey, particularly in the last few years. And I think what you've navigated, like, you have done it. I know maybe you didn't feel like you were doing it with so much grace, but you really have, and for me, working with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I see a lot of the meltdowns and the stresses that they don't show other people, because I'm the emotional healer. And I just think that, the pressures that you guys are under, it's a lot, and they're like very tough decisions to make. And I think many people go through their lives not having to make such defining choices. Sure. Honestly.
Yeah. And
you had to make a lot at once.
Yeah, I definitely did. Absolutely. It's funny too, because, there's been definitely there was a breaking point, and then this kind of, I'm still calling it like my cocoon stage.
Yeah.
Like, I've really took some time off social media. Yeah. I've kind of been in this chrysalis, and I really haven't shared anything with anyone. So you're kind of the first to hear everything.
Thank you.
This
is the tell-all.
Yeah.
I love this. Okay, so let's give some background on your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah.
So let's go back to college.
Yeah. So my entrepreneurial journey is really interesting. So I'm going to kind of give some context. I grew up with a single father. We have a business that's about 80 years old, and it's been generational and handed down from my great-grandfather. So I'm actually the first female business owner and the fourth generation of this family business. Now, when I was in college, I really kind of fell in love with marketing, and I was right in the kind of precipice of Instagram, and really as Instagram was rising. So Facebook was already established. Obviously, MySpace had kind of had its moment, and I interned for Red Bull, and I just kind of have always been working, again, with a father that's an entrepreneur. I started working at 16, and I always was kind of around it, and I was fascinated by money, and I was fascinated by how people could create these kind of businesses for themselves. So I started with Red Bull, and it was amazing. They really kind of just cut my teeth on social media and working with athletes. And back then we used to call influencers opinion leaders.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And so it was whoever was the opinion leader in media, or, kind of the who's who. I'm losing the word, but anyway, so I started there, and they actually asked me if I wanted to quit college and go on full time. And I remember I talked to my dad, and he goes, "No, I want you to get your degree." So I got my degree. I moved back home, and I said, "Okay, Dad, I'm ready to take over the family business."
So you wanted
goes,
to?
"Oh yeah, 100%." Okay. He goes, "I hate to break it to you, honey, but you've never failed.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what it's like to run a business." He goes, "You can always come back to this. You can always come run the family business, but until you start something of your own and you go after something that, you're going to fail at or you're going to succeed at," he goes, it's not your time yet."
Good advice.
Very good advice.
Had he done that?
No. So at 16, my grandpa threw him the keys and said, "Good luck."
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe it wasn't. He started working there at 16.
Yeah.
He was later into his 20s. But at some point, grandpa tossed the keys and said, "Have fun."
So he just had to figure it out.
He had to figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that also, too, he wanted me to go get my degree, really wanted me to stay in that. From there, I said, "Okay, great. I'm back at home living with my father. I have no job." And there's a lot of parts leading up to the agency, but the long of the short is that I got into a hospitality group. I started really pushing them on social media. I got all of our 15 properties to basically go onto Instagram. We started entertaining bloggers. We were running ads. We were doing emails. I was kind of this workhorse for all these different bars, hotels, and restaurants. And from there, I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I didn't love I was working with Marriott and Hilton and all the ownership in between. And it was really corporate, and it was just really, really white collar. And at the time I was looking at San Diego, and we had such amazing brands coming to market. We had Liquid IV, we had Copart, we had Suja. We had all these just really fun health and wellness brands. And I started to fall in love with them. Yeah. And so I was like, I basically put in my 2 weeks. They let me take 5 clients, and I was off and running and started my own social media marketing agency. From there, I ran it for about 7 years, and it evolved into basically a creative communications agency where we touched everything from social media to branding and design to experiential events to influencer marketing. And we primarily worked with CPG brands and had a little bit of San Diego hospitality as well.
Okay, so there's a lot of good stuff. Tell me about like the difference in the landscape, like marketing wise, social media marketing wise, from like when you started.
Oh my God, night and day.
To let's even just like take it like throughout Eckis marketing. Like what was changing?
Yeah, I mean, we think that's like back then I thought social media was fast moving. Today it is just a whole nother beast.
It's insane.
It's insane, and it's evolving, and it's multiplying, and there's so many different avenues and platforms, and I love it all, and I think that we're in no way, shape, or form going to see an end to that. But back then, it was really interesting. It was so much like the wild, wild west. Like I even remember working with different content creators, and the pricing was just all over the place, and some people were doing free stuff and some people weren't. And, brands really didn't know how to navigate it. They didn't really know how to navigate Instagram or Facebook and all these different things. So I was learning as I was going. And I think the one thing about my agency was that made us so great and so strong and really helped us to like kind of cater to our clients was I was in such a learning environment that I took whatever brand that I had on almost as this entrepreneurial seeded vision. Yeah. And so I really adapted our services to them, but also to understanding what we did right, what we could do well and what we couldn't do well. And so at that time there was a lot of really different cool projects that I got to be a part of that I maybe had never really been the expert at, but that had tried and went for. And as social media evolved, we kind of learned these best practices, and it was cool.
What have you learned in terms of like what works with certain types of brands versus others when it comes to social media marketing? Because I feel like it's so crazy now. Like there's so many different directions to go. And I feel like earlier on, like there wasn't as much noise, and so it was easier to get visibility, and now it just feels like a clusterfuck. So I'm just wondering like how you help people or have helped people like figure out like the right path for them. Like
Sure.
what's going to work with like, I don't know, whether it's maybe a brand new company versus like a larger one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to plug a brand right now because I absolutely love them. I'm working with them and they're incredible. I'm working with a sleep tape brand right now.
Okay.
And, you know, there hasn't been a whole lot of education on sleep tape until the Skinny Confidential kind of dropped it. And then obviously with her following, there was a lot more education around it. And we were talking about social media.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because when you think about social media, it's so overwhelming. You feel like you have to be on all these platforms and really be showing up in all these different ways. And the biggest thing that I look at brands and I work with them on is, number one, what's our immediate need? What are our goals? And where do we want to be in 5 years? Now, we look at brands like Poppy, right? Or we look at brands like, you know, there's like Doe. I'm trying to think of maybe even Olipop. These brands have established this really crazy cult following on social media, and they've really shown up for their community. Now, I don't necessarily think that's applicable to every brand.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you sit down with a brand, you kind of have to have a little bit of that entrepreneurial side and really understand what these three main parts of their business are and where they're looking to go, and reverse engineer their social media strategy. So for example, with Drift, you know, we're really looking at this brand as being the sleep hygiene brand and not necessarily just another beauty brand or another supplement brand. We really want to own that 15 to 30 minutes while you're sitting in your bed getting ready to go to sleep. And we started talking about it, and the one thing that just made the most sense is really looking at who's going to be kind of our champions in the influencer space, and then also creating that content that's going to showcase that. You know, I think even dumbing down brands to say, let's just start with Instagram.
Yeah.
Let's just start with, you know, if you really want to be community driven, let's build a community. If we're not looking for that, we're looking for an exit in 3 years, and we just need things to look really nice and just look professional so that we can keep things moving because you got the back end of the sales dialed. Great. We don't need to be posting every day. I don't need you to be posting 7 times a day on TikTok. So I think that you have to reverse engineer it now versus trying to be everything for everyone and spreading yourself too thin.
Totally. Well, so what platforms do you think are the best for like what function? Like, do you think Instagram is the best place to build a community?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think right now with TikTok, I've loved the TikTok space so much, and I've found it so fascinating. The one thing though that I do see about TikTok is that brands don't necessarily thrive the same way that they thrive on Instagram. And that's because TikTok has become so much more of this, I hate to use this word because it's so overused, but so much more of an authentic platform.
Yeah.
You know, you're posting a 5 to 10 second reel with something funny and like so low quality, but that's what performs the best. Yeah. And so when we're also dealing with this whole other generation that's really fatigued with advertising and X, Y, and Z. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't know if Instagram's the best, if I'm being completely honest, but I do think that as a brand, it's easier to work with content creators on TikTok to have them have a real experience with your product versus you trying to get on there 7 times a day and hardcore advertising through your content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Do you feel like influencer marketing is needed now to like be seen?
Oh, this is such a hot topic. Yeah, I really do. And I think there's a lot of conversation on whether or not influencers are dead, or whether, you know, the big ones are going to continue to be the big ones and the small ones aren't going to, you know, are going to just kind of wither away. But I think that there's still a lot of economy in the content creation space, whether you're influencing, whether you're doing UGC. I even see writers now. I see a ton of people that are the hospitality, you know, foodie people that also are writing articles on the side. So I think there's a lot to be done in that space.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine, like, I see it from the podcasting side, for example. Like, I'm like, every brand like goes hardcore with the podcasting space, like it does well. Yeah. Like if you put ad money there, like you will do well because %. Yeah. Like if people are going to listen to someone talk for, you know, an hour a week, like they trust you. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think we could go back really.
No. And you know what's funny is I wish I would have gotten more into that space. Yeah. I've never done an ad set for a brand on podcasting, but I've heard amazing things.
Yeah. I mean, that's the side I see more of. But I mean, it just feels like that's taken over. I mean, I was thinking about like random ads I see on like old school, like TV or, you know, you're at the airport and billboards. And I'm like, I don't give a shit about any of this. Like, I actually usually think that's tacky shit. I'm like, why would I ever buy any of that?
100%. But the amount of times I bought stuff off listening to like literally the Giggly Squad. Yeah. And like they were talking about like period underwear the other day, and I like bought a pair and I was like, I buy more things off, I think, listening to someone that I love, or whether it's comedy or X, Y, and Z, versus again, having that ad fatigue where you're seeing in the airport and you're just, it just doesn't hit the same way.
Totally. Well, do you think that that's required products to actually like be better quality to do well?
1,000,000%. I think that we're also seeing like, so in the consumer package space, like when we're talking about actual physical products, whether it's something we're digesting or it's topical or whatever it is, I think we're seeing a lot of variation. Instead of having these true household names and this one leader for each vertical, you're seeing all these different kind of splinters off into smaller brands or different founders or different like niches in a sense, you know? And so I think that we're seeing a lot more of our consumers wanting to find the smaller brands and wanting to find people that they trust in order to purchase that. Or, you know, they want a certain type of lifestyle. They want to be like someone. They want to feel like they're using a similar product as someone else. But I feel like we're seeing a lot of that, and we're seeing a lot of brands blow up because of that.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's also this like counterculture movement going on. I feel like so many people, they're like, I want to find the random niche brand. Like I don't want to do what's popular anymore. And so then you have that going for you too. Like when you're more of I mean, I'm that way for sure. Like I like to find the smaller brand, like the smaller, you know, food company. Like this is the secret gem. Yeah. You know, people love that. So I think like there's definitely a lot of space for people. My question is, what do you think, like, let's say somebody is starting a brand and they're like, I want to build like a cult following. What do you need to make that happen?
You need to find your people. I mean, I think when I hear founders talk like that, it reminds me a lot of someone that wants to build a community as an influencer. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of similarities in that. It's your story. It's how you're showing up every single day. And, you know, we're taking that a step further. It's creating that product that's going to serve that very specific need that's specific to you. So, you know, we've seen a lot of success in influencer products, right? A lot of these influencers, they grow up real big and then they go ahead and they launch a beauty product or they launch something. And the products are usually so in tune to who they are that the branding's recognizable. It caters to maybe a very specific need that they have. Again, I'm thinking like of Sivan Ayla and her tanning lotion and her bikini line, and that was something that she had really like loved and grown her following off of, is like how she was always tan and fashion forward. And even Lauren Bostic, you know, like again, she had jaw surgery, she came out with the ice roller, now she's creating facial manipulation tools and stuff like that. So I would say that if you're a founder, you're wanting to create a brand and you're wanting to create this cult following, you need to really look at what makes the brand you and kind of put yourself out in front of it and kind of treat it in that sense and kind of build it in a, I would say, in a public way. Yeah. There's a lot of case studies right now that they're saying that consumers are so fascinated with the behind the scenes and what goes into it that they crave that transparency. When you show up that way with your brand, it builds that loyalty.
Well, and people just want to connect with people.
100%.
You know, and I think
they
like
want connection.
It's like they don't even like if they're seeing you, a real life person, just showing. It's like Midday Squares energy. You know, it's I just want to buy this, and it's good stuff. I do think the products have to be good, and you've got to have that personal connection. But I mean, I have this conversation with a lot of people. Like, I think it's tough when someone wants to create a brand and they want to be behind the scenes and they don't want to be part of it. And like, I think the founder story is important. Me too. I think it's super important. And I think there's a lot of people that don't want that piece, but it's like, I don't know. I just think if you don't make it a personal brand, like you're losing nowadays.
And it's weird, you know, there's a couple brands that I've invested in over the last couple years. And one of them is like, you don't really know who the founder is. And the product itself has enough shelf personality to it that I think it does what it does. But I would say now, again, looking at just the consumer market, it's hard not to be in
Yeah.
front of your brand, or at least to have that story,
Yeah.
right?
So what do you think allows that product to do well if you don't even know who the founder is?
Taste. It's just the product itself.
It's just so good.
It's I mean I'm like deciding if I want to share the name or not. But it's the taste, it's the product, it's the branding. It pops right off, and people love it, and it kind of blew up the way that they position the brand going into market and really driving up sales first is kind of their approach versus the other way, trying to build that community. And they also were a brand that went out and raised, and so they had the ability to do that. They had enough capital to kind of fine tune that first, and also the industry they were in. It was a beverage, so
okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk about community building, I think like let's dive into that. Like how do you feel like nowadays you build real community? Because I think this can also be hard. Like there's so much like swipe culture energy that it's like I think about for my business, the base of my business has always been my community. And I started earlier on when like I was like a food blogger in a sea of not many food bloggers. You know, like I built my business off of my written blog and people read, and I had like a lot of traffic. I mean, I will tell you, my blog, I was at the top of Google search for mouth tape for like 3 years.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, see, you could give me some education on mouth tape. I love this.
I have been mouth taping. People who have been listening to this.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I've been mouth taping for close to 10 years.
Oh, my God.
So
that's why you have such a snatched jawline.
Oh, it's the gua sha. No, but you know, I remember when for me it was as simple as like I write every day. I'm honest. I'm authentic, and I just talk to my people. And I feel like if I hadn't had that base from when it was less of a scene, I guess. I think I would be overwhelmed right now if I was like starting from ground zero and like, how do I build a community? Like, how do I get your attention? How do I get you to like show up or like where to go? It's just like, I don't know. So if somebody wants to build that, what would you say?
You know, what's funny is I'm actually kind of facing this right now too. So I took a lot of time off Instagram and TikTok, and I had always kind of shown up. I built a little bit of following in college, and then, and obviously working with Red Bull really helped catapult that. And then I had kind of always shown up on social for my business, for the marketing agency, for my podcast. And that was really to try to drive as much business and awareness back to what I was building. And so when I took some time off, even still now, I'm like, guy, this is a really interesting environment. And I don't know if my same tactics are going to work the way that they had previously worked.
Yeah.
And so if I'm being completely transparent right now, there's a lot of different ways. And I do have to say the few ways that I've seen very successful just from friends, and whether they're fashion influencers or hospitality, is one, by connecting with others that have similar audiences and exposing yourself that way. So, and I know that maybe sound a little tactical. I know everyone's like, be yourself, post a million times a day, X, Y, and Z. But again, from a marketer brain, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of women do very well by partnering and collaborating with other women that maybe have a little bit bigger followings, or they have a similar shared following. They're going out there, they're creating content, they're kind of partnering together. And we see this too on TikTok. There's a lot of TikTok collaboration. The second one is, and I think, again, TikTok has just brought so much joy back into this that you can be yourself. You can post the most, low quality, low budget content, and you will pop off.
Yeah.
You will go viral. And so I think that brings a lot of people hope, especially those that want to be content creators, by saying like, oh, if I really am myself, I'm gonna collect my people. I'm gonna attract them. And I think that's true. I think it's a lot easier than Instagram for sure. And then lastly, I would have to say, start kind of being that person that you want to be and how you want to look. One of my best friends right now, she's going through a whole rebrand for not only herself, but she's also working on this incredible project. And me and her were talking, and she goes, I've always shown up as like this businesswoman. I've always shown up, and I've always thought I had to kind of be this professional, rigid kind of aesthetic on Instagram. She goes, and I'm not. She goes, I'm so editorial and I'm so artsy. And she started posting these things, and her content just started gaining traction. And there's something about that flow of like doing what you love and
frequency.
Right.
Yeah.
And like being that person that you want to be and showing up in that energy that I think people are so attracted to.
It's magnetic.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I love that. I think that if you are not doing that, it just like won't work.
Trust me, I look at my content now and I'm like, this is hard to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely gone through, like, I think for me, because when I started with all this stuff, it wasn't my job. I was doing it all for fun. And so I didn't have an angle. I wasn't selling anything. I was just podcasting. I was blogging. I was on Instagram, and I was just like fucking around, you know? And so I was just me.
Which is like the best energy to be in.
Totally. Being all over the place. And then I decided I wanted to work for myself and like make my own money. And I was like, okay, well, this is like my job now. I need to get serious about it. And I think the decisions I made in terms of how I shifted with content and how I showed up were very good in terms of like being in the coaching space. Yeah. You know, because I did have to shift things to attracting clients for that. It's a different way of marketing. It is. Yeah. It's not about, you know, volume, you know, it's not about like building an audience like that. And I realized like my efforts before were about building an audience. And then when I wanted to just make money off of being a coach, right, then I'm more about just like converting people into my offer. So it's a very different play. Yeah. And that's a different tactic than if I was like a brand, like needing to build an audience or like build a community. And like, like especially as like a, you know, one person, now there's more, but it's different. Like I only have so much effort to put into things. And so I look at that time and I'm like, that's what I needed to do to get that result. And I did. And now that I'm in like a different energy, I'm like, wow, I'm going back to like OG, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm saying anymore, who the fuck I'm talking to. Like it noticeably makes everybody more active in my community.
It does. And I think again, like just going back to that energy of it's a playfulness. And there's such an, again, I'm using this word authentic, but there's such an authentic transparency to that people are like, well, what is she doing? Yeah. Well, what is happening here? Yeah. It's not, again, we're so fatigued. We have been sold to our entire lives. We have had content pushed down our throats. Yeah. Then when we see something that doesn't fit in that normal mold of it's perfectly curated, it's X, Y, and Z, it's all this stuff, people go, well, hold on. What's happening right here? Yeah.
It's magnetic. Well, and let's talk about the fatigue. Okay. Because I do think a part of this is also, I know when I'm lit up and excited, like everything, because people are like, oh, what's the juice she's drinking? Like, you know, like she like loves what she's doing. But there have been iterations of my business where I'm just like, I'm over it. Yeah. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And I'm like showing up, but it's not magnetic at all because I'm like, I've outgrown it.
Yeah, totally.
I know you know that feeling.
Very well.
You know, so you're running Eckis marketing. Yeah. When do doubts and thoughts start to creep up?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I've noticed a lot of things about myself. So just to be clear and transparent, because I feel like I'm going to kind of switch. I'm going to kind of talk about both at the same time. I sold my agency last year. And I'm noticing a lot about myself with how I operate and how I really kind of push through and push down a lot of emotion and a lot of things that I feel like I need to be doing, right? So if something doesn't feel aligned with me, that's okay. It has to get done. We're going to move forward anyway. It's kind of instead of listening to that inner gut feeling of like, well, do I really want to be doing this? Like, do I really need to be here right now? So when I was in Eckis, it was really a hard business for me, and that it always kind of felt like I was pushing a boulder up this cliff. And there was just always a lot of resistance. There was always something that was wrong. There was always like just something that wasn't flowing. And I remember even working in other businesses and working with other founders, and things would just flow. And I would get so insecure and be so like down and shameful because I'm like, wow, like I must just not be like meant to be an entrepreneur. Like I just must not be good at this. And so it was interesting that there was this point. I also created a startup at some point when I was running Eckis marketing called Get Super, and we could talk about that in a little bit. And everything really flowed gently, and it was beautiful and amazing until certain things happened. But I I was working with this one brand, and they had basically kind of made me an offer, and they wanted me to come over full time. And I remember thinking I was so excited, and it felt so right. And I was so in flow with the team. I was so in flow with the founder. I, just was kind of recognized for doing a lot of this work that I was doing for the brand. And without any hesitation, I go, yeah, I'm selling the agency. And it was such like it was just not even a second thought. Mm-hmm. And I remember kind of thinking that through and being like, this is interesting. I'm so willing to give up everything that I just built just to have more flow and more ease and be around something that excites me. Mm-hmm. So long of the short, that deal actually didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And there was another deal on the table, and that one didn't work out. And finally, the last deal worked out fabulously. But during that whole sale, it was emotional and it was hard. And obviously letting go of your first business is something really interesting that, some people get to witness or some people don't. But I really felt a lot of resistance inside of Eckis. And I remember even after the sale, I go, why was I wasting so much time trying to push through with this when I was so unhappy with where I was at? Mm-hmm. And I was so proud of everything I had done. And there's these core memories that are so full of light and awesome and amazing. But I was showing up in this business every day, and I was just so kind of tired. Yeah. And bogged down. And it was something where eventually it just stopped becoming fun. Mm-hmm. And I was also really falling in love with the investing world. I was falling in love with working with founders. And again, my brain kind of splits half and half between the entrepreneurial side and the marketing side. So it was really fun for me to navigate with them. But yeah.
Why do you think that it always felt like pushing a boulder up a hill?
I think about this all the time, and I don't know if I have the answer. Mm-hmm. I think you and I have also talked about this too a lot. There was just something that was so out of alignment. Yeah. In fact, I was talking with one of my really good girlfriends who's in business as well, and she goes, "You just show up with such a different energy now." And I go, "Why?" I go, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Just felt like every time you were in the agency, you felt like you had to prove yourself, or you just felt like you were kind of hiding." Like you were so concerned about everything, mm-hmm. and you were so concerned about what you were doing. And I don't know. I think maybe because I never felt like the agency had ever gotten to the point that I wanted it to get to. I think I had a lot of pressure on myself. I had very huge, lofty goals. Mm-hmm. And it was never about like having fun. It was never about what are we, what am I enjoying my life? It was always about, I have to get to this next step to get to this next step. And I have to follow this plan, mm-hmm. and I have to do X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. It was just a pressure cooker.
I mean, do you want me to tell you what I think?
Yeah, of course.
And I think that, okay, well, what I think is that you have this expertise and these skills and these gifts. And sometimes the way that sometimes we think this makes sense to do this because I have these gifts. Right. But that thing actually requires different skills than our gifts. And I think that, and I told you this, I'm like, you're just like, whatever lets you like consult, whatever lets you be a visionary, mm-hmm. like you're the visionary brain of like, this is the master marketing plan. But like an agency, agency models are fucking tough. Like that requires you to be a manager. That requires mm-hmm. you to be so focused on like people, and like there's so much responsibility that was not like, you're there to be the visionary, and it was pulling you into all of these other skill sets that like you could put your head down and like make it happen. Yeah. But it's not your greatest gift. No. And I felt like, how much you were using your greatest gift in that business was like just a percentage of when you take out an agency and just let yourself like do the vision. Yeah.
100%. I mean, I think that's also too, like we could talk about synchronicities, and it's like every brand I worked with was like, can I hire you? Yeah. And it's like, no, I have a team. Yeah. Like you can hire the team. They're like, we don't want the team. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, shit.
And it's like, the universe is trying to say, hey, what about this? Yeah. But we can be so attached to what we started building. 100%. And I think like you care about people, you felt this level of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really hard to let go of something when you're like, I have all the pieces. Like, why isn't this working? I know that to be true of myself. And I think like, I mean, we had conversations about this from my side. I feel like I watched you kind of go through it, you know, for a couple of years. And it was like, it wasn't until that point with that offer that it like clicked for you. Yeah. And I was like, the whole time she's got to know, right? I'm like, doesn't she know? Like, we've been talking about this, but it was like, it wasn't an option in your brain to let go of it. No. So that wasn't the conclusion. No, you know,
it was, and I think again, like I've been working a lot on myself on this, and it was like, there was so much pride. Yeah. And such this, just level of pressure that I put on myself, you know, to make this thing successful and to be X, Y, and Z and whatever. That goes all through my childhood trauma, which we don't need to get into today. But like, there's so many things and reasons for why I just had my blinders on. Like I just saw no other route until I let off all the pressure and I go, you know, we're going to sell this thing. You're going to take 3 months off and you're going to be bored. Yeah. And it was fabulous.
I've been very bored. How scared you were. Yo, you were like, I mean, like you were about to go to prison. I was like, you can chill, you know? But I mean, it's a lot. And I guess I wonder, looking back, do you feel like that was the timeline like that needed to happen? Or do you think there was anything that could have earlier pulled you out of it?
No, I think it was the timeline that needed to happen. I mean, here's the other thing too. Like, as much as I put myself through all of that, I learned a lot. Yeah. And, you know, I swear I've lived 27 lifetimes just in those last 6 years of working with different people, of doing all these different marketing things, of having, I mean, I used to have shit go sideways all the time. And I was like, what is this for? And now I look at it and I'm like, my God, because I sit here with a founder and go, do you have a great attorney? Do you have an awesome trademark? Like, do you have X, Y, and Z? And so it's interesting to look at everything. Obviously, hindsight's 2020. But yeah, I think it was the most perfect timeline. And it was hard. It was really hard. But it was something that I think now I feel so free and I feel so excited about what's to come. And I enjoy my work so much more now that I'm like, thank God, you know, maybe I was a little too stubborn, but for whatever reason, it panned out.
It is so hard when you're in the thick of it. And it's so hard, like for you when you're in the thick of it, you, whoever you are, right? But also, you know, for me, helping people, because people will come to me and they're like, what's the meaning of this? Like, and it's so hard for me because I'm just like, all I can say is that you're living the journey of what you're going to talk about.
And you've told me that too.
Yeah. And it's like, I know, because I've also had my own experiences of being in that position where I'm like, what's the lesson? What do I need to figure out? Why is this happening? How do I get out of this? It's like, you're trying to just figure it out in the moment. And there's nothing. There's nothing. Like, it is what it is. And it sucks because you just got to live it. And it's going to make sense in 10 years, you know? Like,
no, and you can't speed it up. Yeah. And I think that's, again, like if we talk about entrepreneurs, right? We're natural problem solvers as well. So, or even not entrepreneurs, whoever's a natural problem solver, you're trying to find the way out. And sometimes you're just stuck in the tunnel. Like, you see the light, you know it's there, and you can't get to the light any faster, so you just have to walk through it. Yeah. And it's a hard lesson.
I think there's also so much pressure now to do things so young. You know, I've had to have this reality check with myself of like phases I've been in. I'm like, why the fuck did I just waste that time? And I'm like, I'm 29, you know, and I'm like, I'm still living all the shit I'm going to be talking about when I'm like 40 and 50 and like a real fucking adult. You know? But I think like a lot of us, it's like Forbes 30 under 30 energy. There is this pressure of like, you should have, you know, built all these things by the time you're 30. I'm like, but you know, the universe isn't on that fucking timeline.
No. Like, and also the mental mind fuck that Forbes 30 under 30 put me through.
Oh my God, I know. You want to talk about it?
No, I don't. We've.
But like the real, it's like a lot of people compare themselves to other entrepreneurs. Yeah. And we're looking at people who are like way older than us and like who did go through their version of shit earlier on. So it's tough when you're in the phase of life where it's like you just gotta go through your shit.
100%.
You know, like maybe shit doesn't get good till I'm 40.
No, and you know what's funny is I do look at that now and I'm like, I think, you know, in my 20s, because I opened the agency when I was 22. Like I hadn't even had a year of partying and I was like, let's get down to business. And I look back at that, and there's parts of it that I'm grateful for, but there were also these other parts where I was so like, I'm going to grow this thing up. I'm going to be married. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to build my home. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I also kind of had this idea of all of that too because of my dad. And I think, again, he created this own level of success that I also felt a lot of pressure to try to get to that as well. And so there was all this unneeded kind of bullshit that I was putting on myself. And I no matter what anyone told me, it was something that I had to figure out on my own. Because you could sit there and look at me, and you did multiple times. You'd look at me blue in the face and say, what is the hurt? Like, what are you trying to do right now? Like, you're just on a hamster wheel and you're running as fast as you can and you're getting nowhere. And so I think, again, like if you're that person, you're going through it, and especially with the youth thing, you have the rest of your life. And I also feel like too, when you're in alignment, things happen so fast, and to the point where age does really not even matter. So
well, and that's the thing. Also, it's like we can feel like we're so behind, but your life can change in one fucking day.
Literally, mine did.
So there's that. Let me ask you, when you decided to sell the agency, what were you most afraid of happening? And maybe more specifically, who were you most afraid to tell?
I think I was afraid of a lot of things selling the agency. I was afraid of a lot of judgment. I was afraid of a lot of criticism. I was afraid of, you know, even like telling my family like how much I sold for and what I sold for and what the nature of the business was. And I think that a lot of also to my professional environment, there was just a lot of opinions that were constantly kind of being thrown at me that like I should have just been like, who gives a fuck? Like, honestly, at the end of the day. And so as I was going through this, I was like, you know, am I doing this for me? Am I doing it for an exit? And I was like, I'm doing this for me. Like, I am. Like, I'm done. I'm tired. I'm done. I've worked my ass off for this thing. And so that was kind of the hardest thing was, you know, when people would ask, and I remember there were some people that would like take me out to lunch and take me out to coffee and just to like hear about it. And at first I was like, well, this is cool. Like, they're really supportive. And then after, you know, like the third one, I was like, now I just feel like I'm whoring out my own information and story. And it's really just kind of the drama of the whole sale. And so I also had to kind of like live with that and understand, like, you know, I get to now decide who is in my energy and what boundaries I get to have talking about it. Outside of that, the second biggest thing was I was so afraid that I was going to lose everything, like skills, talents. I was so afraid of becoming rusty or like not experienced with clients or with social. And like it would wake me up in the middle of the night and like I'd have dreams of like I didn't know what I was doing and like I couldn't do marketing again.
Wow.
It was a lot. And I think again that tied into how deeply I related my worth back to my business and how it really became so much my identity. And that's even something right now that I'm still working through. And that was hard.
Well, and I think also just like that you've never really let yourself stop.
No.
I mean, I had a similar. It's interesting that you say that because I feel like people don't say that very often. Like they don't express that fear. But when you say that, I'm like, I've definitely had that come up with like, I think for me, it was more phases of my business where I realized I needed to pull back on like content consumption, like, or for me with like nutrition, because I started in health and wellness, and I was like, well, if I'm not listening to every fucking podcast and reading every fucking PubMed article, I'm like, I'm not going to be a good nutritionist. Like, but it was taking up all my time, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I had to let myself stop learning more for a period to realize like, I'm okay.
Yeah. I felt the same way about like, honestly, like TikTok and Instagram. Like I was like, I took off 30 days and I actually took off more because I was like, I'm not going back on. This is nice. But I remember thinking like, well, if I'm not on TikTok, how am I going to know what's going to happen? And then I'm not going to know what's going to happen and I'm going to become irrelevant. And I'm not going to be able to speak to what's happening in the marketing world or just even in the media world, you know? So it's a very real fear. And I think also too, when you let go of something that, again, you've never stopped with, you just kind of feel like you're losing a lot of purpose. Yeah. You know, and you're losing your job, you're losing your identity. Yeah. So
it reminds me of like exercise addiction or like athlete. It's like never having stopped, you know, going to the gym or doing whatever their sport is. And it's like, if I don't do it for 30 days, I'm going to be horrible. It's like, you got to trust your body, you know? But I also think when it comes to social media marketing, it's like the landscape's changing so quickly that it's like if you stayed the whole time, you could go through this and learn it all, or you could just pull yourself out of it and plop back in here and learn this.
It's 1,000,000% that way. You know, you're not missing a thing because everything's changing.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember like back in the day when I took a social media break, everybody was, where are you? What's going on? I'm like, if I went off for 3 months, no one would give a fuck. Like people would be fine. Like they wouldn't notice anything. You know what I mean? Like honestly, there's so much going on. So I think that's like, you know, we've got to face those fears and stuff, which you have. So you're going through this sale. How is this coinciding with what's going on with Get Super?
Yeah. I look like,
dude, I felt so bad for you. Like I felt like you're like sending me these voice notes like Christina, you'll never believe what happened. Okay, this happened. I'm like, this poor
for
woman.
Your audience, like I was, you know, like the dog Lucky, like the junkyard dog, where it's just like that dog keeps walking and no one knows how this dog is still walking. That was my life for like 2 years.
I was like, my heart went out too. I mean,
listen, when you tell God and universe no over and over again, he's like, okay, we're gonna keep learning. Yeah. No. Honestly, so again, I look at these moments now and I can laugh and it's very funny because like I can't wait until like I have a daughter and she's like, I'm gonna open up a coffee shop. I'm like, fucking good luck. Let's see what we got going on here. And I love that. I love that I have these stories and I love that I can also share these stories too for others to learn and to enjoy. And like before I think I used to have so much shame and I used to be so afraid and like so like, oh, I'm such a bad person. I'm such a bad entrepreneur. Now I'm like, no, actually I'm kind of a badass because I made it through out of all of this. Yeah. And not only that, I've always had the best of intentions. And at the end of the day, shit happens for a reason. And whether or not it's for that learning lesson or so that I could go off and share for others or X, Y, and Z, it happened and it's okay. Yeah. So all while I'm doing this, I was trying to also set up Get Super to either be operated on its own without me or to sell. So we had gotten an offer from a venture capitalist company and it was a lowball offer for our trademark. They didn't want anything to do with the brand. And I was like, how could you not? We have like the sickest branding, but whatever. And they wanted to take it and make it into their own using this trademark. And so they gave us a lowball offer and I basically told them to go kick rocks. And he said, okay, great. We're going to take you to the USPTO board, which is basically the trademark association board that goes through and makes sure that everyone has a proper trademark, business is operating usual, I won't get too deep into the nightmare that it was, but essentially they took us to the board and they were going to try to put us through exorbitant amount of attorney fees. And I decided on principle that they really had no case and that we were going to see it through. They ended up dropping the case, the venture capitalists did, because they kind of got in trouble from the USPTO board because it essentially was extortion. And what they were claiming was that we were an illegitimate business that hadn't had sales for 3 years and we had. So they were already approaching pretty big slap on the hand and fined. And then they were also approaching the fact that I could have countersued for a lot in X, Y, and Z. Long of the short, they drop it. We go, okay, great. Let's go our own ways. They came back to me last February and offered me a very awesome deal. And I said, basically, you should have just done this in the first point. Here you go. Let's settle on X, Y, and Z and counting everything that you just put me through.
Yeah.
And company's yours.
Did that feel good for you? How did that feel?
It felt like there was justice in that for sure. I don't know. I look at Get Super and I'm so proud of it. And it was such a beautiful case study for what we were doing. It was really hard to grow the company, obviously being, and I'm not making an excuse by any means, but it was a CBD coffee company. And a lot of my traditional marketing background had not been dealing with vice products. And so especially CBD and how it operates on social media and just the kind of protocol and guidelines that you have to follow. But I loved doing it and I loved building it and I loved really kind of formulating and doing everything with it. So when it came to turn it over, there was a little bit of me that was like, am I letting go of this potential of this brand that could be something so big and so beautiful and what I really intended it to be? You know, and then I'm also like, and I'm also giving it to kind of the bad guys. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? Like, again, what are you doing and why are you doing it for? Why are you doing this? And, you know, I kind of had to sit with myself and I was like, you know, do I want to be Whitney Eckis that has Get Super? And is that what I want to be known for? And I was like, no. Yeah. You know, I want to be someone that has built up a brand that is taking it to its next level, that's going to sell it for its next level and move on and move forth and continue doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And I think that that's where I kind of landed on that. Whether or not that's bittersweet, it really felt perfect for me. Yeah.
It's so interesting because, again, it's like, I know how difficult it is when you're in it, right? And then here I am, and I'm like, Whitney, this is too small. Like, I'm like, that's not where we're supposed to end up. You know, like, get out of it. Like, this is like, just like, it's too small. Like, and you've gained so much experience through this. Sure. You know, I think what's interesting is you had these two businesses, like, compare and contrast, like,
very different
things that work, things that didn't work, how you were relating to them. Like, you had way more of an emotional attachment and identity attachment to Eckis marketing, and like Get Super was much more like, you know,
it was so fun.
Yeah,
like so fun.
Yeah, and so I think that it reminds me actually a lot of when people are dating like two different people, and it's like you're seeing this. It's like this person's a karmic soulmate. This person, you know, it's like you're like seeing that compare and contrast about how it feels, and I feel like you have that with Get Super and Eckis marketing, and so from that perspective, I'm just curious, what have you learned about like reasons why certain things worked or flowed and why they didn't? Like what did that contrast teach you?
Yeah. Get Super was just a total, honestly, like case study for people falling in love with what we were doing and just having fun and just jumping on the bandwagon. Like, I mean, when we were kind of at our prime, we had done this like opening event and then we had gone to this trade show and like, people just felt happy and they just could feel the energy. And I was just having fun. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of fucking around. Yeah. And, you know, and also too, while taking care of something that was personal to me, I drink coffee every single day. I still put CBD in my coffee. It helps my jitters and my anxiety chill out. And yeah, so I think with that one, it was beautiful to see that flow come from something that I was just having fun with. Yeah. And, you know, against with Eckis, there was always so much pressure of like, it can't be fun because this is business and this is serious and this is how I make my livelihood. And now even I've created I'm still in the process of developing it, but I have a consulting company called Way Holdings right now. And Way Holdings is something where I've been really leaning into how do I work with brands? How do I kind of build up my investment portfolio? And eventually I'd like to even create a fund. And so that's been really awesome just seeing that come to light and how that's also flowed. I mean, it took me no time at all to set it up, and just even moving everything into it and working with new clients, and the job offers I've gotten since Eckis have just been so much more aligned.
Yeah, totally.
So it's just different energy.
I mean, you had to go through a massive death.
Yeah.
Massive death. And that period, like, okay, there's the Get Super thing, there was the Eckis marketing thing. You moved. Like, I
moved.
Like, I was just like, where is she?
I ended a 6-year relationship.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's funny. I think my girlfriend had a really good scenario, and I have to give her credit on this because it made so much sense. There's kind of like she kind of gave me the scenario like a stool. So there's like 4 pegs to a stool. And if one peg is shaky, the other 3 have to be really strong.
Yeah.
And, Eckis marketing was really shaky. And so there were a lot of elements in my life where I was like, this has to be strong right now. I can't deal with it not being strong.
Yeah.
And my relationship was one of them. And so I think when I took a step back and all the noise cleared and I looked at where I was living and I looked at who I was living with and I was looking at my life, I was like, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just really not happy.
Yeah.
And so I basically was like, I want to change. And like God in the universe does, I found my house, which is this incredible like 1970s mid-century beach bungalow. And it was like a 6-month lease. I ended up getting it extended the whole year, and it's just been a dream come true.
Yeah.
And and even with the relationship, me and him are still friends. We're actually working on a project together right now for business with our 2 other friends. And his life also changed too. And it was something where, we both talk about it, and he was like, had you not kind of had the balls to do this, he goes, I don't know where I would have been. And so that was something too where you're allowed to change your life. And I don't think a lot of people give themselves that freedom. And I don't think I was giving myself that freedom either until everything was kind of like scorched earth. And I was like, well, shit, if we're doing this, why am I living in the subpar when I just kind of blew up this whole portion of my life?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, it's wild how, like, when you finally get clarity on one thing and you like pull the trigger, like, we're going to release this, suddenly you look at everything else and it's like easier to see.
Yeah. It's like you're just taking off your visor.
Yeah. And I mean,
goggles.
I think it's, for me at least, like, when I'm in a phase of clearing this out, I'm like, might as well just rip all the Band-Aids off. And that's when I go ham. Like, literally, I'm going ham. It's like a full thing.
Oh my God, no. The amount of and thank God for my friends. Like, I have to give it up to my friends and my family that have just been like, are you okay? I trust you.
Yeah.
Are you okay? But like, my God, this is a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just your friend and I'm watching from the sidelines.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of have to.
I think when you're in a high pressure situation for a long time, it's like you're just trying to manage what's in front of you, that there's just no space for any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the stool thing, 100%. Yeah. So what has supported you like through all of it?
Yeah. It's been really interesting. I really let myself just be, if I'm being so honest. I let myself sleep. I let myself not work for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And I kind of just really wanted to be bored. And I wanted just this kind of just calmness and void. And I wish I could say I was meditating every day. I wish I could say I was journaling every day. I wish I could say I was doing these really healthy practices, but I think my nervous system was so shot that I had to just kind of have this moment of coming back and, like, again, just a moment of void. And so I did that, and I did that for about 3 months, and then things started flowing. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to take on anything. I'm not going to bite on anything. And I still haven't. Like, there's still some things with the holding company that I have people kind of asking about, and I'm like, I'm not quite ready yet. I'm not quite ready to be back in the mix and be jumping back into something. I have projects that I'm working on, and I have, we have this really incredible project that I can talk about in a little bit, but we're opening up a restaurant in Point Loma. Yeah. And so that's been something that I've always wanted to do. I've always joked about having my own bar and whatnot. But there's a lot of these things that are very passion project oriented, and they're doing well. And so I think right now I'm very in a state of, I just want to heal. Like I said, I'm kind of in this chrysalis. I'm taking things slow, and I'm releasing a lot of the pressure that I used to have around goals and what my life should look like, and what I should be doing at this age and how I should be doing it. And I'm just kind of resetting.
How do you feel like your personality has changed?
I don't know. I think I'm a lot funnier.
You've always been funny, Whitney.
That's all that matters if you think yourself is funny. But no, I'm a lot calmer. I've been told I'm a lot easier to be around, which is great. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much.
Wait, who said that?
I think my family said that.
Were they supportive? Like, okay.
My family?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those that had never owned a business were really scared for me. I think that they really were like, you have a good thing going kind of thing. My dad is such an entrepreneur. He quite literally could not care less. Yeah. In the sense of, if you're not happy, why are we doing this? If we're not making the money you want to be making, why are we doing this?
I think that's the thing that's hard for me. Like, people give me opinions that I don't ask for about business choices I'm making, and I'm like, they'll say things like, but this is doing so well, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not. It might be financially, or it might be like visible, like in terms of visibility, but it's not, because you don't know like how I'm feeling every day in it. Yeah. You know, and so I think that's like what can be very frustrating when people like give these opinions. I'm like, you don't actually know what's going on.
100%.
Like, no one really does except you.
Yeah. I mean, trust me. I also went looking for those opinions too when I was trying to run Eckis, you know, of like, what am I doing wrong? Yeah. And I think most of my family, all my family and friends were supportive. I think, again, they were just a little scared, but I mean, here's the other thing. Like, I sold my company when I was 30. You know, a lot of my family and friends are living very different lives than me. A lot of them are married and have babies. A lot of them have a substantial career that they've always been in. And I've never quite been like that. I'm very disruptive. I'm very kind of all over the place and want to be experiencing as much as I can in different arenas. So it made perfect sense to me. And I'm like sitting here smiling, like, well, what are you going to do about money? And I'm like, I'll figure it out. Yeah. You know? Like, you're an entrepreneur. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. You know, it's like, what do you mean, what am I going to do about money? I sold it for a reason, too.
Like, exactly. It's like, I'm going to figure, and you always have opportunities coming in, you know? So I think that's what's funny. It's like, for somebody you're somebody that has endless ideas. I mean, what you're just saying, you're like, yeah, I'm not doing anything, but I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm starting this restaurant. I'm like, okay, you know, like, you're never going to be blank.
I could create a subscription for people just to use my brain once a day without me having to be responsible for it, fine.
Literally, great. You should. I mean, that's the problem and the gift of the visionary. Yeah, right? So there's always another idea. But I think that, you know, people, and this is why it's hard to ask people for advice. Like, everyone's going through their own stuff, and like project our own lives onto other people's situations, and like how we would feel in that situation. But we're all different, you know? It's kind of like when people ask like inappropriate relationship questions, and you're like, why are you like coming at me? And they're like, oh, it's because you feel weird about your relationship.
Oh, 1,000,000%. You know? The relationship thing too is, you know, it's hard. I come from a very traditional family, so naturally the conversation has come up about children, and there's been a lot of those questions. And trust me, like, as a woman, you know, we've been raised with this this expectation that, you know, we're meant to breed and we're meant to, you know, reproduce and all these things. And so, you know, oh, you're 30 now. Oh, what do you're single again? Like, There's a lot
It's
of
so
that.
young though. That's what's crazy.
It's
I'm like,
so young. Well, especially now we're living past 100.
I
We're
know.
fine.
I know.
We're fine. We're all gonna be old moms and dads. It's
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, I just think that's what's crazy. It's like to act like you're 30 and you're, old. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're still so young.
It's in the comparison to how the other generations lived. And it's, again, it's like when there's change and when things are new, it's always scary. And it's scary for someone too that lived their life that way and they're seeing you live your life a different way.
Yeah.
It doesn't compute.
Yeah.
That or it makes them uncomfortable.
Totally.
Yeah.
What are you most excited for right now?
To go take my dogs for a beach walk after this.
Yeah.
So that's
and
boring.
just chill.
Yeah. No, honestly, there's a couple things I'm excited about. I am excited to give myself this time of rest because I think if there's ever to be a comeback of what I do next, it will be very strong. And I'm just not ready to grind my teeth on that yet. I'm sure there'll be a moment. Maybe there won't be as much grinding as there was before, but I'm excited for that moment, but I'm also really wanting to give myself this time of rest. And I'm really just kind of living day to day right now. And like, again, like I'm trying to absorb the fact that I live by the beach. I've never lived by the beach before.
Yeah.
My 2 dogs are happy. I am solely only responsible for Whitney, which is like very unique. Not having employees, not having a relationship, just very much so focusing on me.
And you should soak that up because I feel like, after like once you hit, I don't know, adulthood, there's so few times that in your life, like for the rest of our lives, that you're going to be in that situation.
100%.
Yeah.
And then I'm focusing on like my passion projects. Like I'm designing a restaurant and like how epic and sick.
Wait.
Oh my God. And like I'm working with these 2 partners that in the San Diego hospitality scene, I've just been in awe of for so long. And so I'm really trying to be in like a state of enjoyment right now.
Yeah. Well, enjoyment looks great on you.
Aww.
You are glowing as always. But I mean, you're just like such a light and I love you so much. And you're so like, you're just so talented. Like,
oh my God, you're so sweet.
You're so talented. I'm like, you're like one of the only people I mean, let's just the marketing thing. You have so many other gifts, but I'm just like, you're like the only person that I know that has that type of vision. Like really, really, really.
Thank you.
And so I love this season for you. Like, I just want to see you free and thriving. And like, I feel like when you can just have the space to just focus on your passion projects, like it will pop off. Like I'm on the Whitney train. I'm always on the Whitney train. I'm like still drinking expired get super. Like literally I had some expired get super the other day. I mean, it's like,
it doesn't really, I mean, the CBD just loses a little potency.
Yeah, okay, maybe it doesn't expire, but like I'm just like there's a vibe. You know what I mean? Like there's a vibe to it. Like the things that you touch, and I'm like, it's a good product, but I'm like, you know what I mean?
I love that.
I'm excited for what you create, and I'm just like, this is gonna be the best restaurant, and
I can't wait to have you.
I can't wait. Oh,
you'll have to be one of the first. It'll be beautiful.
Oh, I would love to be.
We have a speakeasy too, so we'll just guide you right back in there. We have a whole mocktail program going down.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm getting involved. I love this. Very exciting things. I am so pumped for you.
Thank you.
And we will put all the links in the show notes for everybody to connect further with you. And thank you for coming on the show. Love you so much.
I love you too.